Hello, people of the internet. This is Kyoji. I'm going to be talking about how I build my EDH decks, all the way from the inception all the way through until I think it's done. So, the very first thing I do is I come up with a game plan. What is it that I want the deck to do? This could be either based on the commander or based on a specific card or strategy that I want in the deck. So, I built Rukthar the Unbowed a long time ago. He's the 6/6 for 6 in Gruul. He has reach, he has vigilance for some reason, and he attacks each turn available. But the thing that caught my eye was whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, he deals 6 to their face. So my thought was, if I give him lifelink, I won't take any damage because I really don't want to play the all creature strategy. So I did my research and I was like, hey, Basilisk Collar, Batterskull, and Lockstone Warhammer all give lifelink. Warhammer is really important since it also gives them trample. But they're all equipments, so if I could play Stoneforge Mystic, I would, because it's the best card that gets equipments. But so instead, I found Godo Banded Warlord, which tutors the equipment straight into play. So you ignore the initial 6 damage, and since I'm playing Godo Banded Warlord, I might as well play Grafted Exoskeleton to also give him Infect. So that's like the basic game plan of the Rukthar deck I used to have. So all my decks, I try to have these 5 primary pillars, which is ramp, card draw, removal, recursion, and win conditions. Ramp is pretty easy. It's just putting extra lands or mana into play. This could be cards like Rampant Growth and Wood Elves and Farhaven Elf, and cards like rocks like Fellwar Stone, Signets, Darksteel Ingot, etc. I much prefer getting the land acceleration rather than playing rocks, because rocks and mana dorks are susceptible to all types of removal, where lands is kind of that taboo if you don't really want to destroy them because social contracts. Card draw is just adding more cards into your hand. This could be drawing extra cards or tutoring cards out of your deck, things like that. And I much prefer repeatable card advantage type cards, so I would rather play a Phyrexian Arena, which will draw me a card every single turn, rather than Read the Bones, which you could go up to 4 cards deep and only lose 2 life, but you're only getting 2 cards and you're only getting it once. Removal, this is pretty easy. You want to be able to deal with what your opponents are doing. This, I feel like, is skimped out on a lot of other people, where they're like, oh, I could politic my opponents. Like, no, I want to be able to get rid of the shit that I don't want to deal with. Like, my opponents, Ulamog, or their Mind's Dilation, just anything my opponents are playing. I categorize my removal in as wraths or spot removal. Now, I much prefer not running 1-for-1 removal, since most of the time you're playing a 4-player game. A 1-for-1 is card disadvantage in comparison to what everyone else, with all the other players. I try to have a 2-for-1, or try to have like a recursive removal. Recursion, very simple, just being able to play out of your graveyard. This is my favorite type of strategy in Magic, where I constantly have this attrition of bringing back and playing my cards over and over and over again, whittling down my opponent's resources. And win conditions. Trying to actually win the game is kind of the point of playing a game like this, where you want to be the last man standing, and to do that you need to like actively try to win the game. Win conditions could either be your commander, it could be that big haymaker spell at the on the top end of your curve, or it could be a combo that ends the game. Beyond the 5 primary spots, I have a couple flex spots. Counter spells. This Not all decks are going to have a blue color identity, but in my mind, for counters, you want to have 5 to 7 proactive counter spells and up to 7 reactive counter spells if you're playing that type of strategy. Tutors, like I said, is a type of card advantage. You want to be able to find your silver bullets when you need them. You need to be able to find your win conditions if you need to win the game sooner. Tutoring over and over and over again just to get like the 4 pieces for this combo, I feel like is a very poor way of using tutors. You're just degenerating your entire deck to being a combo deck, and that's not really fun for me. And then utility spells, these are things that don't really fit in those strategies, but they're useful throughout the game, such as Ghostly Prison type effects, card manipulation, just things that don't fit into the previous categories. So once I figure out what I want my deck to be doing, I go onto the internet. I use either Scryfall or magiccards.info to research what I want. So I've set in a criteria for their advanced search, hit enter, and then just scroll through a couple hundred pages worth of cards and pick out all the ones that I think are interesting and cards that I think would work well in the deck. And usually by the time I'm done with all the search, I end up with about 300 something cards. So the thing I do right after that is just trim down to about 62 cards. This keep in mind I'm talking about non-lands. So trim down the deck. So when I'm trimming down the deck, I want to find some synergies between certain cards. So card A that works well with card B and C, because when I'm building my decks, I want to build with synergies rather than just straight powerful cards. I much rather play with cards that work well together, such as Salvager of Secrets with spells that recur creatures, like Reaping the Graves, that let me get other creatures that enter the battlefield triggers, rather than playing something that's just big and powerful. And then after I trim down all the non-lands to that sweet spot of 62, 61, 63, then I pick out the lands. So I have all the duels, all the shocks, all the fetches, all the filters. So a little project I had for a while. So I have, for the most part, I could make any optimized mana base, because I never want my lands to enter battlefield tapped. I'm the nuts and bolts Spike. I would want to try to play the best cards, play the best plays. So missing a beat by having a land come into play tap is not something I want to be doing. Some people don't have that luxury, but if you can, try to have your lands not enter battlefield tapped. And another thing I always want to try to do is have my lands be my primary source of color fixing. You want to be able to have your lands tap for 2 or 3 different colors all the time. That way you could, instead of using a bunch of spell slots on ramp and color correction, you have just your lands doing that. And so this fills up like 70% of my mana base, the last bit of the mana base, I try to fill up with spell lands and basics. Spell lands, they're just free spell slots, like using a High Market or Vora Stronghold or Academy Ruins. Lands that do something that a spell can do. So you basically have extra spell slots in your deck that's within your mana base. And then I like having a good amount of basics for two different reasons. One, just in case your opponent is rude and play Blood Moon, or you're running spells that care about basics, such as Rampant Growth, Explosive Vegetation, things like that. You want to be able to have a good amount of them so that those spells aren't dead later on in the game. So, decks built, I have all 99 cards sleeved up, commander in a hard case outside of the deck. So then I go down to my LGS and just test the deck. I just grind it for like 5-6 games in a row, try to work out the tweaks, and then play test some more, and then tweak it again, and then test, and then tweak it again. And then when I think I'm done, a new set comes out and more cards are released. Someone mentions, hey, you should be running this, and then I go and find it, determine if I want it or not, find out some cards aren't working well in the deck, so I take it out, switch it out. The reason why I do all that after I'm done with the deck is because a commander deck is never finished. There's always something better, there's always something new, there's always something that you missed. So in my mind, there's no such thing as a fully optimized deck. There's always something that you could do to make it better, to change it up. You could upgrade it, downgrade it, whichever. But you're not going to be able to build a commander deck and then say, okay, I'm going to have it in this exact build for the rest of the time. That's not going to happen. There's always something new that's going to come out every single set that you're going to be like, ooh, I want to play this. Ooh, I want to play this. And that's my fun part of Commander, is just always tuning the deck. So that is how I build my Commander decks, and I'll see you guys next week. See ya.